I call to order this regular meeting of the Monument Board of Trustees, Monday, August 20th, 2018. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Hogan, would you take roll, please?
Mayor Wilson?
Here.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Here.
Trustee Koopman?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Here.
Trustee Stevens?
Here.
Okay, before us we have a consent agenda and an agenda. Are there any modifications? Okay, I have a few. We have a late add to the agenda, which is the appointment of Mr. Lushnat to the Board of Adjustments. I don't believe we have any discussion on that. I would like to motion to add it to the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes. I have one other modification. I would like to make a motion to move the discussion items because we have several presentations and presenters to keep them from waiting. I'd like to move discussion items to number 7 or in between 6 and 7. Motion to move discussion items.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Okay, that motion is approved 6-0. Do I have any other modifications or a motion to approve the agenda as modified?
Motion to approve agenda as modified.
Second.
A motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. First item on our agenda is Recognition Shield 616 donations. Chief Schur.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and trustees. If I could have Mike Hesterman come up representing 616, and Andrew and Caleb would also come up. And if Warren was in the audience, I don't see him, so come on up here, Jim, thanks. Mike, if you would tell the group about what 616 is all about.
So Shield 616 exists to provide this protective tactical gear for police officers across the United States. We've been able to outfit 2,000 plus officers in 17 states. Several weeks ago, we were able to provide this gear for Monument and Palmer Lake. And by the end of September, all of El Paso County law enforcement agencies will be completely outfitted and plugged into our support program. We started in January 2016, and as I said, we're in 17 states and have been able to provide this gear for 1,600 officers, and we always say, and their families, because there's a peace of mind aspect to what's done here. And these two young men, as you probably know, they've had more interviews than I have in my lifetime, have been instrumental in helping us provide the gear for Monument and Palmer Lake. So I'll let Chief Shirk speak to that. But we appreciate all the support that the town, Monument, and Palmer Lake has given us, and we're just excited to be partners with you.
Thank you. This program started by a police officer who's now retired by the name of Jake Skifstad. That was one of the SWAT members that responded to the abortion clinic shooting. And the story he talks about is showing up. He had made his own gear. And when he showed up, he saw all these officers showing up without the protective gear necessary. He retired shortly after that and started a company called 616. I believe it's a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And has done outstanding work. All of our police officers are now equipped with this equipment. It runs about $1,400 per officer to equip. These two young men, any idea how much they've raised? Anybody? Shout out a figure.
15,000.
You're close. These two young men by themselves I've raised $14,000. They were one of the first to actually donate to the Monument Police Department. I remember meeting them a number of months ago, and we were presented with our first several vests, and it was due to these two young men wanting to contribute to the community. And with that, I would like to present a plaque, and I actually made these plaques. I'll show our board first. It's addressed to them specifically. I'll let you hold this. Go ahead and hold this. I'll read this one. This is to Andrew and/or Caleb for his dedication to the Monument Police Department, keeping our officers safe. August 20th, 2018. And in it, I put up one of our challenge coins that you can remove. You just pull it out, and one of our little badges. So with that, Andrew, Caleb, thank you. For businessmen, these are your two people.
They're hired.
So I'm actually going to leave this gear out for a little while. So if you want to take a look at it, if you have an opportunity, please do. Thank you.
Thank
And
you,
their
Chief.
mother, one of their mothers.
Next item on our agenda is ordinance number 14-2018, an ordinance approving the site plan for a drive-through restaurant to be located on the Block 3B, Block 1 of Jackson Creek Market Village, replat number 2. Ms. Jones.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. That was very quick getting to the ordinances tonight. I have a couple ordinances before you tonight. The first is ordinance 14. This was project D810 2018, a site plan for a drive-through restaurant. An aerial photo to give you an idea of the area we're speaking about. This is Baptist Road is at the bottom of your screen with Jackson Creek Parkway on the left, and the lot is highlighted in red. There's currently constructed a 7-Eleven on that corner and a dentist office, which may not be accurately rendered in that aerial photo. And as you'll see, or as you can see, and we've actually talked about this, platted this not too long ago, that site is actually, it's only accessed through the private drive aisle, which is inside the site. There's no direct access onto Baptist Road. So a quick summary, as the mayor mentioned, lot 3B, block 1, Jackson Creek Market Village, replat number 2. The lot's about 0.6 acres. This is pretty simple. This is just a site plan for a drive-through restaurant. Almost 2,100 square foot building with 25 parking stalls. As I mentioned, the access is internal. Those are private drive aisles. No direct access to Baptist Road. And all the code standards have been met with the submittal. This is an illustration of the lot configuration. The lot in question is on the lower right, and then I just highlighted that common access easement that serves to provide access to all 5 of these lots. That's actually already in place, and that's how the other lots get access at this time. That is a rendering of the site plan. Again, pretty simple, a little over 2,000 square foot restaurant building with a drive-through aisle on the eastern side of the site. Parking, there are certainly other items that aren't clearly shown in the schematic, including landscaping and trash enclosures and those types of things. But again, all code standards have been met. So these are the proposed elevations. It's a pretty modern style with straight lines. There is 4-sided architecture. There is a variety of materials provided on all 4 sides. And then there's that tall column that is prominent on the southern face. And this item was before your Planning Commission earlier this month on the 8th. The only real discussion by the Planning Commission was about the traffic flow. That's why I mentioned that the private common traffic easements to the north of the site, and there were no members of the public that spoke on this item. The Planning Commission does recommend approval, and staff is available to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Ms. Jones?
Just one question. Has there been any discussion on signage with them being right on Baptist? I know there's still some discrepancies on another fast food restaurant that's gonna be going into Jackson Creek. So have you had discussions, or have they proposed what they're looking to do?
In terms of the specific branding for the site, is that the question?
I'll be a little bit more direct. We're not gonna see a 100-foot neon sign that you'll see up in the Black Forest.
Certainly not. The applicant would be required to follow the code standards and get a standard sign permit. They have not asked for anything aside from what's allowed. They actually haven't asked for anything at this time, but the permits would be required to follow the code standards.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions for Ms. Jones? Okay, is the applicant here?
Yes. I'll go back to a graphic for you, if you'd like.
Good evening. My name is Corey Fraker. I'm with Well Development Group. We are the owners of this property and also the developers of the site plan before you. I can answer any questions that you may have to the best of my ability. I'm not an expert though in some of the areas of things, so if I don't have an answer, I apologize.
What was your name again?
Corey.
Corey? Does anybody have any questions for Corey?
Looks like a beautiful building.
Thank you. I did not design it.
Seeing none, and this is a public hearing, I will open it up to the public for anyone who would like to speak for this item. Seeing none, I'll close that and open up to anybody who would like to speak against this item. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for any further questions, comment, or a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance number 14-2018, ordinance approving a site plan for a drive-through restaurant to be located on Lot 3B, Block 1 of Jackson Creek Market Village, replat number 2.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Koopman,
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Trustee Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes. That motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Court.
Thank you.
Next item, ordinance number 15-2018, an ordinance approving the amendment to the PD site plan for Tri-Lakes Collision. Ms. Jones.
Good evening again. The next ordinance is ordinance 15. Tri-Lakes Collision is proposing an amendment to their PD site plan. So to remind the board of this location, the building we're in tonight has a tiny turquoise or aqua colored star there at the bottom of the slide. This is straight north on Beacon Light Road at Wolf Court on the east side of the road. So this property is almost 2 acres. There was a very slight lot line adjustment approved recently to allow for this modification that only moved by about 18 feet. The applicant is proposing a 10,000 square foot addition to the building. This addition was shown on the original site plan that was approved by this board about a year ago. But there was a note that they would have to come back with this amendment to actually get it approved. Again, as it was shown on there at that time, there's no real change to the sort of the function of the site or the overall layout of the site or how it works in any way. It's really just an expansion of the building. As this site plan shows, the area highlighted in blue is the existing building, which is recently opened. And then the expansion is shown in green. Again, it's just expanding the building size. This item was also heard before the Planning Commission earlier this month. The only real question from the Planning Commission at that time was just confirming that the additional space was for the same use, more space for the same use, that they weren't adding anything new or anything like that. And again, no members of the public spoke on this item. So the Planning Commission does recommend approval of the amendment to the PD site plan. And staff can answer any questions.
Ms. Jones, will you remind me, is this the only business in this development, or was there more
There's actually 7 lots a part of the Wolf Business Park. This is the only lot that has an approved PD site plan at this time.
Okay, so there is other lots in there though.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? No? Seeing none, is the applicant here?
Good evening, Steve Herron with Sandwich Construction. I'm representing on behalf of the applicant, and I'll take any questions if you guys got them.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Hammers? Seeing none, I will turn it over to the public. Would anybody like to speak for this item? Would anybody like to speak against this item? I will bring it back to the board for further comment or motion.
Motion to pass ordinance number 15-2018, an ordinance approving an amendment to the PD site plan for Tri-Lakes Collision.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
No.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes. That motion passes 5-1. Ordinance number 16-2018, an ordinance authorizing the sale of real property granted of permanent non-exclusive easement to El Paso County. Ms. Corley.
El Paso County has notified the town that it needs to obtain additional right-of-way and easements for the North I-25 ramp project. And if the town does not wish to sell the property to the county will initiate eminent domain proceedings to take the property. The county had an appraisal performed for the property and the 2 easements and is valued at $4,300. The town can sell the easements and the small parcel of property to the county by ordinance if it chooses to do so, and would receive the $4,300 in exchange for deeds and granting 2 easements.
Any questions for Ms. Corley on this ordinance? This is a public hearing item, right? So would anybody like to speak against this? Seeing none, would anybody like to speak for? Okay. Does the board have a motion or further comment?
Motion to approve ordinance number 16-2018, ordinance authorizing the sale of town property and granting of permanent non-exclusive easements to El Paso County.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
That motion passes 6-0. Ordinance number 17-2018, an ordinance of the Town of Monument, Colorado, acting by and through its water activity enterprise, authorizing a direct loan finance to finance improvements to the water system. Ms. Smith.
This would be the 4th item that's been brought forward this year on this particular project. The first was in January, where the current board approved 2 projects to be done in the water system for this year. And then in June, we brought forward the right to make the loan for this project and to pay the town back for any monies that they would pay out of the loan. Because to date, we have paid probably close to $600,000 or so far on this project. August 6th, there was a motion to ratify a lender recommendation for the 2018 Water Enterprise Fund debt, which was previously approved on Resolution 3/2018 and Resolution 18/2018. So this is now an ordinance that was written by our bond attorney, Tom Peltz of Coutac, who's handled all of our bond issues to date. And the ordinance is, sorry, I'm trying to find my slide. The ordinance made a motion to ratify Key Government Finance Inc. to be the lender of record for the Series 2018 debt. Attached ordinance 17/2018 is the ordinance authorizing the town to go forward with Key Government Finance Inc. for the 2018 Water Series Enterprise Fund debt. The total amount financed on the series debt will be $1.8 million at an interest rate of 3.4%, which will amount to $347,746 over a period of 10 years, making the total estimated payoff of the debt $2,147,746. The annual debt payments will be approximately $214,775, which is within approved amounts for the 2018 budget for capital improvement project funds for the Town of Monument Water Enterprise Fund. So I'm open to any questions, even though I did not write this ordinance. I'll go over it with Mr. Peltz and.
Okay, questions from the board?
I
Trustee
don't
Clark.
I don't have a question, but I did read through this ordinance. I did have some questions that weren't really adequately answered. And in my estimation, the ordinance is misleading, doesn't address our immediate needs as far as getting a new water tank is concerned, is inappropriately pledged, doesn't rise to the legal definition of an emergency, so it is untruthful on its face, and I haven't seen the tax letter of instructions.
I would respectfully disagree. The water tank has not been approved yet, the new water tank, I should say, nor the old, repairs on the old. This is to finance 2 approved projects from January of this year. As I said, this is the 4th thing that's been brought forward. There are no documents until the board authorizes the loan.
But this ordinance states that it's an emergency, and it doesn't rise to that legal definition. So applying for a loan untruthfully has legal consequences that I don't want to be part of.
About how we're applying for this loan. We've done our.
It says it's an emergency ordinance.
Can you explain that, Ms. Corley?
Yes, it's in section 30. The ordinance has to contain a declaration that says it's necessary to preserve the public health or safety and contain the reasons for it. And so it's stating that you're doing this loan for water, which would be a health or safety issue. Which in section 30, it's on page 16.
I'm pretty
And
familiar.
that makes it the ordinance effective today instead of waiting 30 days.
Would it normally
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, would it normally go in effect in the new fiscal year, or what would be the delay? Because I know the legislature does this all the time. They'll pass something because they want to, because it has several things in the clause there talking about public safety and issues like that, to get it into play immediately, even though it's technically not an emergency, as in people's lives are dying or anything like that, but it's something that was required in order to get it to move quicker. So do you know what the actual time frame would normally be without this clause?
30 days before the ordinance would become effective.
Well, 30 days after
Publication.
publication.
So we have to wait for it to get in the paper.
Okay.
And I had a similar concern with that verbiage as far as listing this as an emergency. I asked myself, is this ordinance, in quoting the verbiage you referenced, Ms. Corley, is this ordinance necessary for the immediate preservation of public property, health, peace, or safety, and an emergency exists? I also came to the conclusion that no, it does not. I don't think that there is an emergency with this. In fact, we've been doing the projects. We've spent, as you referenced, Ms. Smith, $600,000 so far towards these two projects. So the question is, does the emergency exist? And referencing immediate preservation of public property, health, peace, safety, it's a challenging one.
Does that affect the process at all if that were to change?
The process itself would not be affected other than locking in the rate.
So we risk the rate.
You run the risk of the rate going up or possibly going down, which would be nice. But, it's mainly for locking in the rate and then getting all of the information flowing, because to do a municipal loan takes a lot of work between bond counsel and the bank's counsel, and it's a rather lengthy process. In fact, even closing this loan by the end of August would be quite a jump for people, but they said they could get it done. If you don't want to call it an emergency, it'll post, it will take 30 days, and then whatever rate is in force at that time is the rate we would accept. So we need to reword this in that.
Or delete section 30.
What was the rate again?
3.4%. 3.4% interest rate. 3.4%.
3.4.
So when you're shopping around, where does 3.4% fall in? Is that something that's pretty reasonable if we sit on this?
It was the least expensive. Wells was right there at like 3.42 or something.
I'm really familiar with these
other-
loan products. And
Sorry.
Ms. Smith has the floor.
Colorado State Bank came in. They didn't quote a 10-year term, they just quoted a 15.
That's right.
So we
This
went
was
with
previously in our board packet. I
Key
remember.
was the least expensive loan rate,
Mhm.
and it was also recommended by Jim Manier of Hilltop Securities, who does the loan consulting, and Mr. Peltz as well. They recommended Key over Wells.
Okay. Trustee Clark?
I'm very familiar with Key Bank's loan products, and just the covenants in this loan product are egregious for a municipality to accept. I know that all the different banks offer different interest rates, but you can't take that in its entirety alone. You have to look at the covenant agreements that the town is willing to make and the pledge of collateral backing this, and I don't believe it's in the best interest of the town to commit to this type of loan. That's just my opinion.
I appreciate your expertise in loans and your field of real estate. The covenants were all examined closely by Mr. Manier and Mr. Peltz of Coutts Rock, who, as I've said, has issued several bond issues, not just for this town, but for several others. They found the covenants in Key to be less restrictive than those in the Wells. This is not purely on interest, it was just nice that the interest was lowest, but it takes into effect the interest in the covenants. And this is exactly the type of loan that we would make in a municipality. So I'm not sure what your concerns with the type of loan is.
Well, there are several municipalities that have accepted this loan that are frantically trying to refinance because the covenants were so egregious. And I'm glad that they took a look, but I haven't had the ability to take a look at those terms. So unless I have the ability to look at the terms, I can only assume that this is the typical Key Bank product for municipalities, and it is egregious. And I know these people that have created it or done it are very, very well versed in their respective career choices there, but I can't put my seal of approval on a loan like this for the town. It's not in its best interest, in my opinion.
Trustee,
I respect your opinion, but I don't agree with it.
That's fine.
Trustee Clark, can you please explain to us then what specifically is so egregious that you're concerned about, so we have a better understanding?
Well, the covenants themselves I haven't been able to get. I've asked for them several times and I've been told no. So I don't know if we are subject to the same covenant, so I hesitate to bring those particular specifics up unless I've actually been able to examine the documents. But the typical documents, other municipalities have taken out this specific loan, and they are desperately trying to refinance at a much higher rate to avoid some of the consequences and some of the restraints on their municipalities through this loan.
Have they given you examples on the restraints through this loan?
Not that I can pull up and give to you right here and now, but the specifics were never shown to me, so I don't feel comfortable in proceeding forward without it.
The covenants of the loan are what's outlined in the ordinance. The ordinance is what we will follow. I do not have loan documents, as I had said, because this is the document that will allow us to proceed forward with the loan and to get the loan documents. Once I have loan documents, I will certainly make sure the board has all of the documents that I have. But as far as covenants, whatever is in the ordinance is what the town will be agreeing to.
I have a handful of concerns specific to what was in the detail, so I don't know if that addresses it, but may I?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. So again, the emergency was a big one for me as far as how we have this classified. I think it would open up the doors for potential liability and some of the to challenge the definition of emergency and that this in fact is or is not one. But of course, concerns, details lie within the verbiage with me, and as I read through this, there are things that continue to pop off the page. And again, this is coming from a trustee who acknowledges that those projects are important and was part of the budget cycle as we were looking at that starting last year. What I don't see in the verbiage is a specific list of the projects that this entails, just a broad inclusion of projects that will also or may also include the ones that we're referencing, those two projects, which total about 1.5 million. So concern, of course, that there's no clear breakdown of specific projects in the verbiage of this ordinance. Also, probably the biggest concern that I saw on there, aside from a few legal things I'll get to, is that only water rate revenue can be used to make note payments on this loan, and you state it's about $214,775 is our annual note payment on this. Of course, this would require a mandatory rate increase to ensure a minimum surplus, as stated here, equal to 125% of the annual payment due, so about $270,000. Given the vulnerability of how that fund has been, what we went through with the last water rate increase, and the unpredictability of water in general with the water rates, dry season, wet season, all of that, it seems really difficult to put us in a position where we're pledging only water rate revenue to be able to use to pay this portion of the loan. Likely, just based on a rough estimate, that would add a $1 to $3 per 1,000 gallon rate increase immediately just to meet the requirements of this loan. You're more than welcome to chime in if you'd like, but I have a handful of others.
It's not just the water rates, it would be tap fees, meter fees, other income, which is nothing. But basically your tap fees and your meter fees are considered part of that.
Part of the water rate income.
Part of the water income. The only thing that you cannot account for is sales tax,
Yeah.
which is a minimal amount into this account anyway.
So again, given that we're legally obligated to ensure consistent and reliable water services, we're also legally obligated to ensure those services and those rates are both fair and equitable. With the unknown of what that is, even if you throw in tap fees, this all but guarantees an immediate rate increase and continued rate increase. Looking at the $1.8 million note, in our budget, we budgeted a max of a potential water fund debt of $1.549 million. So this is 250-ish over that amount. The CIP projects were funded in the budget. Where does the excess funding go that's freed up by taking on this loan to repay the general fund on those projects? That would be a big question, is where is that excess money?
What we have in expenditures for the water fund, it's on section E2 of the budget under the capital improvement project fund budget. Under revenue, we're showing borrowing revenues of $1.549500. Oh, sorry, didn't do it.
And again, that's potential, so that's
correct. But what this project involves is $924,500 for well 4 and 5 treatment plant upgrades. $625,000 for the booster station upgrade, which is a 1549500. Another $150,000 for well 4 and 5 building rehab after the rehab, which is really an odd way to put this in the budget. But after
well, I understand where you got the 1.8, but
Yeah.
referencing those two projects specifically, 924.5, 625 is 1.5495.
It is, but the additional
But
150
we
for
budgeted.
well 4 and 5 is in this budget as well.
Correct, but we budgeted borrowing a max of 1.549. So what we're actually doing here is borrowing more money than we budgeted for.
Well, that was actually, the 1549 was a CWR PDA note, which we were hoping to be able to get. The other part is the 89050 for other financing, for capital leasing financing that we haven't done in 2018 because we didn't lease finance.
And that takes us to 1.65-ish?
Yes.
Okay.
And then Any additional funds that are used for this project would just reduce the amount of sales tax that has to be used for capital projects. And as addresses your concerns about an immediate water increase, the first payment for this note isn't due until 2019, and that's the year it would look at the water funds, and they look at that at the end of the year, as opposed to do you have a 1.25%, 125% coverage on it. If you look at your water master plan that's been approved by the board, by a couple different boards, there is an annual water increase called for in that master plan to take care of master plan projects, of which these are 2 of them. We don't know for sure that we would have to do an immediate rate increase, but I would remind the board that in the master water plan, it allows for, actually calls for annual increases, which we haven't done since we did the first master plan in 2016, I think it went through.
I'm familiar with what it requires or what it suggested, and also how this conveniently incorporates a essentially mandatory or imminent water rate increase. I'd like to go back to the borrowing $150,000 to $200,000 more than we budgeted for borrowing. How can we do that?
We can do that because instead of putting in sales tax, you look at the line items on your budget. Sorry, I closed this and shouldn't. So if you look,
and my biggest concern, of course, is legal ramifications. Specifically, statute 29-1-110 says during the fiscal year we shall not expend or contract to expend any money or incur any liability in excess of the amounts appropriated. So
what we have appropriated for funding for sales tax includes $389,250, sorry, wrong line, $345,000 from sales tax. So your bottom line total revenue that would flow into this capital improvement project fund is $2.8 million approximately. Part of that is water, part of that is general. So if you take the part that's water, and I did not bring a calculator, is the 15495, the 89050, and the 345. The loan is up to 1.8 million. It's a construction type of draw, so you don't sit there with more money than you will use on these projects, and it's very specific to these 2 projects. I believe it was the one back in June, the request for fixed rate lending proposals is the one that outlined both projects that this money could be used for, and that's all this money can be used for. It won't be used for anything else.
it's just the project.
Just those 2 projects.
Right. And then that, again, goes back to where does the money that frees up, where does that then go? Since it was budgeted from other pools of money.
That's targeted for the sales tax. So if, for instance, we didn't use that much on sales tax debt, then that amount would go to the other sales tax obligations, which is if it is not debt and you can't do more than 10% sales tax revenue into your enterprise fund to maintain your enterprise status, that extra money would then flow into the 2A capital, or the 2A water acquisition, storage, and delivery fund.
So then that excess money from the $1.8 million loan will be spent on non-water related stuff, or essentially it frees up.
It is absolutely constrained to water. It would go into.
No, I understand that. I'm talking about the other budgeted money, because we budgeted 1.5 as borrowing, and you're saying that we need to borrow 1.8.
The other
and
items,
what that's going to do is free up more money regardless of where it comes from, and my concern is where that then goes, not to mention there's probably other projects that haven't been done on this CIP project list.
there are some projects that haven't been done, but it's quite honestly getting too late in the year to get anything started.
Case in point, do we need to borrow $1.8 million while jeopardizing the minimal water rate revenues that we have that's already going at a fine line? This puts us in an incredibly compromising position. And again, it's black and white as far as the statute saying that we can't spend or contract to spend more than what we've appropriated, and what we've appropriated in the budget is 1.5495.
What we've appropriated in the budget is 1.5495 plus the 150,000 for well 4 and 5. Again, what's appropriated, what the state looks at as appropriated is the total water CIP for 2018, which is the 1.8945.
So you're saying it doesn't matter that we passed a budget that said we are only going to borrow $1.549 million,
What we said
and
is
we
we're
can
going to
borrow
borrow
more?
$2.7628 million. That's what goes to the state. The state doesn't.
Where does it say we're going to
Take-
borrow 2.7? And again, I
Section
appreciate you
2.
walking me through this because these are significant concerns.
It's on section E2.
I have it right in front of me, absolutely. I see the 2.7, I don't see where
Yeah.
we borrow 2.7.
I beg your pardon,
I
you're
don't
right,
see
that's
where
not
we're-
borrowed, that includes the sales tax, but that's the total revenue that will come in. And so, when
Which
they,
we're ahead of as well this year, so.
that includes all revenues that will come in. The line items may change, the borrowing amount may change, but the total revenues that come in are locked, and not as locked in the state. If you get more revenues, you can restate your budget and
Which we haven't done.
no, and do more expenditures. What the state really looks at is your expenditures. You know, you don't go over that 1.8945 in expenditures for the water fund, because that's when the state will pop you. Same for expenditures for the general fund, where we're taking things out. You know, we have 230,000 general fund expenditures in there that we probably won't do this year because we didn't do a capital lease. So I'm saying when you send these items to the state, what they're going to look at is what's your total revenue that you've pledged, that you're going to get, that you think you're going to get, what your total expenditures and what your net. And if your total expenditures don't exceed your revenues as far as what you've given to the state, then that is acceptable. If you want to spend more money, then you have to restate the budget. And the normal reason to restate the budget is if you have more revenues and want to spend more expenditures, then you restate the budget so that you can spend more than you told the state.
So
I'm not answering your question.
Not at all. So even though this loan, this ordinance, emergency ordinance, states that we are borrowing $1.8 million specifically for water, and even though the budget that I put my name on and approved said we were going to borrow $1.549 million for water, I understand the other items on the list, but that is not water. I still don't see the discrepancy between we budgeted borrowing $1.5 million and we're requesting to borrow $1.8 million. And then a statute staring right at me that says you can't do it.
Sorry, I was trying to get to
So-
a calculator and I can't get to it.
Yeah, and you may not be able to alleviate my concerns, but again, I'm
I
only one trustee, so.
Miss-
I doubt that I can because I don't have the expertise of the people that put this documentation together. The 15495, excuse me, and then other financing general fund. Okay, that's a capital lease, I got you.
And I'm looking at section E2 just as you are with the final budgeted amount for financing for water funds specifically is 1.5495. I'm not looking at the projects, I'm not looking at the cost of the projects, I'm not looking at anything
Well, the
there.
1.5495 is one loan that we were hoping to get through CWRPDA that we could not get.
So this loan's not even budgeted on there.
Well, it's financing, and maybe my mistake was putting down a specific financier. It was money we are going to have to borrow to do these projects. And at the time, CWRPDA, too many R's in there, had a loan program available, but it was not available for these particular projects. And the 1.5 and then the 389 is up above 1.9 million, and so I'm saying that if we borrow 1.8 for these two projects, then anything over and above the anything up to the 1.8 that isn't used would be reimbursed to the note and lower the payments, and or if the sales tax is involved, the sales tax would flow into the 2A water 2AD fund.
So as far as the state, they're just looking at the bottom line.
Well, they're
Doesn't
looking at your
matter.
revenue line, they're looking at your expenditure line.
They're not looking at which items you borrowed for, or,
They just care that you don't spend more basically than you say you're going to spend.
okay.
And you don't spend more than the money you bring in.
Ms. Corley, in your review of this?
I have not looked at the budget, I can't answer.
No, I meant the liability issues as far as,
I would have to rely on bond counsel that filed that prepared this to answer, those questions. I'm not,
are they attorneys?
yes.
Oh. Any additional questions from the board?
The bond council is aware of our budget.
I beg your pardon?
The bond council is aware of our budget.
They have a copy of our budget, they have a copy of the audit. They
Okay.
have a copy of the financials.
Thank you.
Should we table the ordinance until we can hear back from bond counsel to see if this would be an issue?
To see if the liability would be an issue?
Right,
or
the liability. If that's a huge concern for people, then I'd be amenable to waiting for council to get back to us and give us some redress on that issue.
That would be a possibility. Would you like to motion that?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and motion that we table this ordinance until, what is it, the next meeting? Until we hear back from, you think, Ms. Corley, do you think you can get back, or the bond counsel can respond in that time frame?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you clarify, what are we asking the bond counsel?
For the liabilities of this,
Any liability concerns?
So based on our budget, can we borrow the 1.8 or do we need to borrow the 1.549?
And the emergency ordinance removal of that clause.
Well, I would be I'd be amenable to. I mean, that's only 30 days, you know. So it makes the difference of getting this implemented in 30 days to catch our interest rate or not. So I'd be amenable to, if that really troubles people, I would be amenable to removing that clause, to amending the ordinance to remove that clause, if it makes everyone uncomfortable. If that's a deal breaker here.
As would I, knowing that now if you're putting it off to the next meeting, you're probably looking at closer to 60 days to lock your rate, which could be good or bad. Nobody knows that.
Right.
I'm not trying to be doom and gloom and say, oh, if you wait, it's gonna, because I don't know. Nobody knows.
I would like to see from our town personnel, based on 2019, what the projections of what the water increase will be, not only to the residents, but what they will be to the tap fees. I know we're playing the what-if game, but the what-if game can go south or north, so I think that'd be very interesting to see, from this trustee standpoint.
what we're due, and I know I've brought it up in the past, we're due to address water rates just to keep up with standard every
And I
other
mean, if
district.
Trustee Bornstein's talking about just looking at a 2019 budget, what our revenues are projected.
Exactly,
Without-
yeah,
I'm sorry.
no, that's okay.
So you're saying to see if we'd even hit that 125%?
Yeah, because I mean, in all fairness, there are a lot of variables to it that neither side can predict, but it'd be good to maybe look at
I'm
worst
working
case,
on that now.
worst case scenarios.
So, on the base budget, so I can throw those numbers in there and we can just see where they fall.
Sure. I apologize for interrupting your motion, Trustee Stevens. You know, I'd be in favor of a comprehensive one. I mean, the more that we have this dialogue, it seems like there's a handful of things to be thrown into addressing the emergency ordinance and getting an idea of what that water rate increase would be. All of this is interconnected. Certainly with the bond counsel to check our liability with that. And there's a personal liability as well for us to individually, knowingly make these agreements in going into debt this way. But also I would like to see the project specifically broken out in the verbiage of this, not to include the projects, but to be limited to only those two projects, period.
Okay. So basically projects.
And then I'd like to know where the extra money goes, quite frankly.
When I read through the ordinance, it said that the extra money can go to whatever the loan delegate decides to put into.
No, I'm talking about the extra money that this frees up from the budgeted amount. So what we're doing is we're freeing up at least $200,000 in extra projected.
Projected's probably better than extra.
Projected or
Projected
anticipated or
is-
desired
yeah,
budgeted
it sounds
items.
a little better than extra.
I'd like to know where it goes. I mean, and it'd be a perfect time. I hope someone's taking notes of all these, but a perfect time to update us on where these other projects are that have or have not been done and will or will not be done. I mean, this is a very.
The only two projects we're working on right now, and we're not working on the booster station, which is the booster station out here that goes up to the old water tank. That's another project. The only project that we're currently working on is well 4 and 5.
Are we going to do the booster station this year? I mean, is that?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, are we going to be working on the booster station upgrade this year then?
If we get this note passed. Like I said, we've already spent quite a bit of money, and even though the auditor was really nice about saying how well we've turned our water fund around and now we're sitting there with money,
Yeah.
that money's going to be gone if we don't finance these projects. So we won't
Our
go
cushion's
forward
gonna
with
be
the
gone.
booster project without funding. We shouldn't have gone forward with well 4 and 5 without funding. But it got done back in January, and you know it's
It's a good thing. It's
they
been a
went
good
forward
year.
with it, and now it's almost finished, quite honestly. So
Just a question, you might have answered this, based on this ordinance, hypothetically, if it were to pass this evening, what would be the ETA on completion of these projects that we're discussing?
well 4 and 5's almost finished. And then
Well, 4 and 5 right now is in the substantial completion stage, so we're looking at probably another month on the high side before it's operational. Booster station will not commence unless this funding is approved, because if not, all that money we've been paying for 4 and 5 will deplete any other capital in the water. We will do nothing in the water if this does not get approved. Nothing capital.
So, just so I understand, so what you're saying, based on this ordinance, to borrow X money, relative to these two projects, they would be completed in 30 days? Am I hearing that? I'm missing
no,
something?
well 4 and 5 would be completed in 30 days. The booster
Yes.
station would take.
Would not be done without
It'll
this.
take at least several months of engineering and
Okay.
6 months,
It'll
9
probably
months.
span both years.
And then probably would have to be after the winter, yes, no?
Well, it's an inside building,
All
so
right,
a lot of it can be done inside.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a motion to table this item. Pam and Ms. Hogan, do you feel you have sufficient notes on the information we're pursuing? And Alicia,
And Alicia.
or Ms. Corley?
I believe so.
Okay.
But just to, we need to identify why it needs to be an emergency ordinance. We need bond counsel to identify a liability or not for the 1.8 versus a 1.549500 that's in the budget. We need project specific in the ordinance to say wells 4 and 5 rehab and booster pump, whatever that project says. Any projected changes that the extra money, or now you got me doing it, the proposed money that would be left over would go to, and 2019 revenues without an increase showing of what we would normally budget 2019 revenues, and would that be sufficient for the 125% coverage of the bond payment?
And I would just like to clarify the removal of the emergency clause.
It's on here.
Okay, so I have a motion.
Anybody, I'm sorry, is there anything I missed?
No, that was great.
Well, Trustee Clark has concerns about Key Bank in general. So if this ordinance passes, then eventually when you get the loan paperwork, then those concerns could be made known at that time then. And if we decide that there's a red flag, then we don't proceed with the loan.
I could ask bond counsel and Hilltop Securities that it's been brought up that there are concerns about the covenants. Covenants are supposed to be part of this ordinance. We can certainly look at that, or they can, I know that they've been looking at the different covenants because they looked at them to make them part of this ordinance. So we could maybe break those out or send those around as well. But we will stick.
That would be
covenants in there
great.
so they know.
Yeah, because it's my understanding that what Trustee Clark is talking about is not in our board packet. at this time, because we're not there yet.
I will ask them to make certain that it is in the ordinance, so.
Okay, so I have a motion to table. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan, will you take roll?
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
That motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda, resolution number 242018, a resolution accepting the 2017 audit. Ms. Smith?
This is the same resolution, we have a different number, for the audit that was presented to you July 31st. And nothing has changed. We've answered some questions back and forth. I don't know if anyone's had private conversations with the auditor, which is fine. I haven't heard from him one way or the other. So I am bringing the audit before you. There was a 60-day 60 days granted, so it would be due by the end of September at the absolute latest. Those 60 days, usually audit extensions are because the audit's not done. This audit is obviously done but not accepted, so it's up to the board to either accept this audit or we will continue to extend it, but the audit's not going to change.
I was going to reiterate, we're not accepting whether we like the audit personally or not. It's just that we have received, the audit's been done and we have received the information.
And the other thing I would mention, I know I heard
Yes.
Trustee Koopman mention that he, and actually I've heard him mention this over the last several years, or two, that he'd like to see a larger example of sampling. And that's something we can direct the audit for 2018 to do. You want 20% or whatever makes the board comfortable. You can instruct the auditor, I want X sampling, I want this looked at, I want that. You know, I mean, they look at a very general.
Yeah, that's actually a question that Mr. Logan was, I think, going to follow up on, was how large his sample pool was this time around, and I had not heard the answer to that.
I know what he pulled because I know what we gave him for samples.
Right.
I mean, I could probably run that, but it'd probably be better coming from Kyle. But for the upcoming audit, we also, as a board, you have the opportunity to say, I would like to see a minimum of 20% sampling, and that could easily change the cost of the audit, which is fine if it puts, you know, your mind at ease or you feel like they're doing a more thorough job. I just wanted to mention that. Yes, ma'am.
And I still haven't received the Forsgren invoices I requested from the last time.
No, you haven't. I sent you something over the weekend. I sent it to everybody because I send everything to everybody, and for that I apologize, but I want the whole board to be informed. I sent you a breakdown of how much was spent upon each project over the last 3 years, 3.5 years, counting 18. I have not pulled those invoices yet. I was going to try and pull some of them today. I do have a report that comes off of the AP system that shows every payment and what it is for. I understand you have concerns about the validity of the invoices possibly, but all I can do is show you what invoices I can get to, but those are out of sight and those will take me a little bit of time to do. I can't do the 2019 budget. I can't do the acting town manager work and just do my normal work and go over to and pull 300 invoices to show you that those are real invoices.
And that has nothing to do with the audit. It won't change the audit at all.
It does have plenty
It
to
won't
do.
change the audit.
But the auditor pointed that out as an area of concern.
That's
I would like to review that area of
The area of concern being more invoices just under $5,000 that were being presented for the same project at the same time. We were doing invoices over $5,000 to the board. When he pointed that out in November, we stopped that and started doing checks over $5,000, which is why you're seeing more and more, excuse me, at your board meetings on these checks over $5,000, because CKT, for instance, there's 2, 3, 4 invoices there, and it adds up to over $5,000. And so the procedure that the auditor was questioning was fixed and is now, we're showing checks instead of invoices, there's nothing we're going to be able to do about those 4 enforcement invoices that were presented at the same time for just under $5,000 and paid. I will happily get you copies when I can. I did send things over the weekend to show you how much money was spent at Forrester and the other engineers, although right now water being our focus, that's where the majority of the engineering money is going to go. It was one of the things that I had a real issue with when I first got into municipal government, was how much money government spends on engineering and projects and looking at how can we do this, what's the right way to do this. I was like, this is just beyond the pale, but that's what municipal government looks like. You have to have those kinds of fail-safes in place with professional engineers who are not part of your town government, so that you know that you're presenting, especially with water, presenting a project, and that project also has to be authorized through the state and the local, and it's extremely complicated.
Ms. Smith, point of order, that it still has nothing to do with the audit.
No.
The audit does not change.
It does not.
Okay.
I just had a question for the attorney. When we're accepting the audit, as the mayor said, so I think you said whether we agree, disagree, whatever, we're accepting it, but if we don't agree with it, that doesn't play factor from what he's saying? Or when we accept that, we're saying, yes, this audit's good, we give our stamp of approval. Can you define that for me, please?
That you authorized hiring this individual, and he has prepared an audit of the town's finances per the board's request. That's required to be done every year. And you're authorizing Pam to submit the audit to the state.
But are we giving our personal, as individuals, saying, hey, we agree with this, and we stamp, and I'm sorry, I know it's rhetorical.
I mean, I guess I don't think you're personally qualified to, he's doing the audit, not you. That's why you're hiring an independent person to prepare the audit for the town.
Right.
So it's not a requirement that you, I guess, agree with everything that he said. You may not, but he's putting his name on that audit.
And we should consider the things he pointed out as things to change or make proper corrections of.
Yeah.
But the last 4 years, we haven't done that. We haven't corrected any of the things he's brought up.
Actually, we have changed some when they've come up.
I asked, and he said that it's relatively the same.
As we go
I
through,
would guess that's out of context.
as we go through the year and you're presented with quarterly financials and any financials report, your checks over 5, your quarterly financials, those all fall into what he looks at. So, no, you shouldn't wait until you get the final audited financials to have questions. I mean, you should be looking at this every time you get a financial report going, what's this check, or why is this, or what's this, or, you know, so we can kind of stay abreast throughout the year, so it's not just this one big, you know, this was a difficult year starting in January, and we you know, went off in February and didn't have our town manager, and I was your acting town manager, I think, a day before my knee replacement surgery. So basically I wasn't here for 4 or 5 weeks, and so it was kind of a messy process this year.
I just think, I mean, obviously there's some questions or disagreement on the audit, but I think the energy that we're spending on it might be better well put on resolving some things that we heard and discussed moving forward, so we don't have those questions in the future.
As the finance director, I can show you financials twice a month if you want. It won't be accurate because we have a 2-month lag on taxes and everything else, but as a board, you can direct me as to what kind of reports you want to see, when you want to see them, how often, where you want them posted. I mean, I'm going on the assumption of prior boards that have given me direction about how to present things. The last time I presented the financials, I pulled them out and did it more like we used to, you know, with all the reports and things that go with it, rather than just having it all thrown under a consent agenda. So maybe a better question is looking for direction about what do you want to see, because I can give you more charts and numbers than you probably want to see, but if I'm not giving you enough right now to satisfy your curiosity or your concerns, curiosity is not a good word, your concerns, you know, then you have to tell me what you want to see, because I don't know what to present to you as a board, as a whole, unless you let me know.
Which I agree, 100%.
And I would like to see the financials monthly, and that's what I would like.
Well, this
Back to the resolution. Do we have any further questions about the resolution accepting the audit?
I do have a question, and that is roughly the end of September. If this does not pass by then, what are the implications financially to the town?
if you don't have an audit on file in a timely manner, in this case, that would be by the end of September, because they've given us the extension. The state has the capability of withholding sales tax, the county has the capability of withholding property tax. I don't know if that happens or not, because I've never been faced with this, and it's not really something I want to test, because our property tax is $900,000 a year, and our gross sales tax is close to $5 million. So it's basically the operating revenues of the town that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So about $6 million.
Yeah.
And to clarify, can you point me to where it states that you can't submit until we pass a resolution?
I can't submit what?
You can't submit this. I'm just
I
trying
can't
to.
submit the audit until the board approves
Right.
it.
I'm just specifically where it states.
I can't. I do know that I can't send it in without the signed resolution that it's been before the board and the board has passed it by a majority.
So are you suggesting that the state statute for reporting requires a resolution
We would have
stating what verbiage? And again, I'm just
we'd have to
trying to
look
get
it up.
educated here because I have not been able to find that. Simply
I
that
can
it
look
must
up,
be
or I can
filed by
call the
you.
state auditor's office
Yeah,
and
I
find
mean, that'd be
out.
great.
That'd be the easy way to do it.
And then it might be a good clarification as well for some of the verbiage for the resolution. I'm sure we've used the same resolution we've used for many, many, many years. But possibly it may need a verbiage update to satisfy,
I
or
do
to
know the board
specify.
has to pass it before I can send it in, or they'll send it back.
Mhm.
Because
Well-
I've accidentally sent it in before without the resolution attached.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see where that is.
Okay.
I'd like to say if it makes the board more comfortable, we can amend the language. Instead of saying a resolution accepting the audit, we can say a resolution authorizing the treasurer to forward the audit to the state.
Yeah, it did, and at that point, it doesn't state that we agree with, or
Okay.
and that's my concern is I can't say positively or negatively that I believe that it accurately represents our finances. And again, we only have our vote, and there are liabilities that come personally to our votes. So.
Then I would like to go ahead and propose an amendment to resolution number 24-217 that we change it from saying a resolution accepting the 2017 audit to a resolution authorizing the treasurer to forward the 2017 audit to the state.
Second.
Ms. Hogan, we have a motion and a second.
Can I?
A motion has been made and a second's been made. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Clark,
No.
Trustee Bornstein,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Koopman,
I'll abstain.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens.
Yes.
That motion passes 3-2.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, discussion items.
Wait, that was the amendment. So did we pass the resolution
Oh.
as amended?
I'm sorry. Do we need?
That was quick.
Yeah.
Good job, Mayor.
Do we have a motion to pass the resolution as amended?
Motion to pass the resolution as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Trustee Koopman,
I'll abstain.
Trustee Bornstein,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Clark,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott.
Yes.
That motion passes 4-2.
Thank you.
Discussion items. Safety of median access. Ms. Corley.
I'm sure you'll notice that you did not have an ordinance in your board packet. And what has happened is, I think the police department was initially misinformed that this was public right-of-way, which led to the board directing an ordinance to control the median at that intersection. myself and the planning department and the police department had a meeting and pulled out the site plans. And the gentleman, I think that everyone is concerned about, sitting on the median right by Jackson Creek Parkway at the entrance to Walmart, that is private property. So if the board were to delve into passing a median access ordinance, it would not pertain to that median right there where this gentleman is sitting. If the board is still interested in looking into a median access ordinance, we're gonna have to do a little bit more work before we can bring an ordinance to the board, possibly get in with a traffic engineer to do some studies of the medians in Monument to look at speed, the shape and size of the medians, things of that nature before you could pass an ordinance, so that you have legitimate government interest that you're worried about before you restrict access to the medians.
So, go ahead.
Two questions I
Sure.
have. So who does that, I'll call it the right of way, who does that belong to?
I'm not 100% clear on that yet. What Jennifer in the planning department and I had looked at, the first site plan made it seem like it was under the control of Home Depot, but then I think the police department has actually spoken to a property manager who indicated that they had control of that driveway. So that is something that we need to clear up, because they have a lot of the police department has had a lot of communication with the property manager, who very much wants to help the situation, is concerned about the gentleman's safety who's sitting there.
So my secondary question, when and if that gentleman gets hit, then they can sue the property manager and not the town. Am I correct or am I wrong?
I wouldn't know what liability we would have for the gentleman sitting on private property. I would think that the first person they would sue is whoever hit him, but
Well,
I can't.
yeah, not going. Okay.
Right.
All right.
But it's something that we need to work with the police department, myself, and the property owner need to work on addressing that specific median, because you won't be able to fix it with a median access ordinance.
Thank you.
Shouldn't that property owner just be able to claim that that person's no longer welcome and it becomes trespassing?
Yes.
I had heard that it belongs to the town.
It should be Cronky, is it? Okay, that's the property owner. Any other questions on that discussion item? No? Okay. Camping and abandoned vehicles, Board of Trustees. Would anybody like to start on this? I don't have anybody, any background.
It's just a comment and observation through town. It seems that we're getting frequent vehicles that might be broken down, that are placed somewhere. It's very interesting now noticing people that are camping in places I never thought possible. We happen to have a car over next door to Freddy's. It's been sitting in there.
It's gone now.
Oh, it's gone?
Police department, I think Stuart took care of that, right?
Yes.
So, in regards to our part in that if it's on public property, does that just go under code enforcement? Because camping we have code for.
That's correct. That was private property, and that was the issue, is that the police department could not tow that vehicle. But I believe that Stuart worked with the property owner to get them to have the vehicle removed.
Do we have procedure protocol where these cars, campers, vehicles are on private property, that how we can expedite so it doesn't become a 2 month, 6 month scenario? Is that something that we have in place or could implement? Yes, Chief.
Private property owners have the right to do certain things. And so until we can convince them to please move it or get rid of it, they can do it. And so that vehicle parked on next to Freddy's, that owner of the property didn't know that vehicle was there. So once we made contact with them, they now became aware of it and they towed it. We can't go onto private property and tow vehicles off private property. All we can do is try to work with the owners of the private property to see if they'll take care of it. So sometimes they agree, sometimes they don't.
I was going to ask, do you find support from the private property owners more so than not?
If it's their vehicle, no. If it's a strange vehicle, oftentimes they will try to tow it, but I've also been informed there's some tow companies that won't go on to tow an unknown vehicle on a person's private property. I've been told that, I'm not sure exactly who or where, but we're kind of in a tough spot when it comes to private property and campers or vehicles. Public property, we're fine.
So in this case, if the owner had said, yes, I said he could park his car there, there's nothing to...
Not unless it falls under some code violation, which I don't deal with the code.
Which we do have camping codes.
Which regulates camping like on a park or
Public
street.
property.
Or
Yeah, public property, not private.
don't we also have codes that apply to private property? You can't have your...
You do, but I don't think that the camping is
You can't
under
have
your
your
nuisance
family
abatement.
living in your RV.
Now, RV is a separate section of the
Okay.
code for recreational vehicles.
Okay.
So it's not something we can stand at putting criteria on cars, even on private property, that they're registered, blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's things we can do, which maybe cross it over with the property owner is responsible. Those cars are gonna be there, they have to be maintained. I'm just thinking outside the box, that's all I'm doing.
Well, there are statutes that require your vehicle to be registered, and, you know, if it's parked on the street and it's not registered, then the police department could address that.
And
But-
tags, right, has the tags
On
on.
public property, that's right.
Yeah, but no empowerment on the private property.
I don't believe you have anything like that in your code as far as abandoned vehicles. I can go back and look at the nuisance abatement chapter to see, but I think most of that stuff is weeds,
Can we add it?
graffiti.
I guess my question, can we add it to the code? I guess that's my thought.
I think it might be easier to start with, can you look into something like that?
Okay, so abandoned vehicles.
Think that, or,
Possible codes applying to...
and I know we have the other vehicles, and the chief knows this, I guess, that they don't acknowledge United States of America and what have you, and they don't have plates or anything, so maybe a wide array, just so we don't become the parking spot of Colorado.
Is the board in agreement with Ms. Corley pursuing just more information on this
Okay.
Thank you.
as to what's in our code and what is changeable?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent.
Code enforcement. I believe we saw a possible posting. Is that correct? No, not a posting, a
There was a job description.
job description, I'm sorry.
In the board
And I would like to note, I appreciate you reaching out to the company that was doing this on a contract basis for us, and I noted her response. I thought was interesting, that she recommended or stated that full-time code enforcement could absolutely be justified, and that there's more than enough work for a full-time position. I found that interesting. So I'd like to pursue that, and as you work, or as we work on the budget for next year, to look at that recommendation of adding that back in as a full-time position. I thought that was a very interesting recommendation.
Just out of curiosity, was it, didn't we used to have a full-time position and then we went to the contract? And what was the reason at the time that we did that?
Was it a full-time or was it a
We
split?
had two full-time code people. Cindy Schrockman actually started out as code and was hired as full-time before she went to be town clerk and HR. Laura was actually full-time code as well. It's been the feeling that a full-time code enforcement person can help with and do other things during the winter, but there isn't sufficient 40-hour-a-week work for strictly code. You can expand the duties, which everybody's job duty says other duties as required. That person could possibly help, Madeline with setting up community events, and could help Laura with park events and different admin functions. but strictly code, it has been determined it's not really a full-time job, which is why they took it and contracted it out rather than trying to find a part-time person, because most people want full-time jobs. People don't want part-time jobs. So,
Okay.
but can you find work for that person to do all year round? Probably. There always seems to be plenty of work for people to do.
So what would the board like to be the direction on this?
I'd like to see the job description broadened a little bit to include general additional work as well. And then as we embark upon the budget season, to look at adding a full-time position to do code enforcement as well as extra tasks.
Can you reach out to CLM and the other groups to find out what
Something like
an
that.
average pay would be? Board good on that topic?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Motions. Next item is a motion to set a public hearing on the service plan for Jackson Creek Metropolitan District for September 17th, 2018. Ms. Corley.
The proposed Metro District Jackson Creek North has filed a service plan with the clerk, and pursuant to state statute, the town has to set the hearing no more than 30 days after the, you have to give notice between 20 and 30 days prior to the hearing. Has to be published in the paper and mailed to property owners and anyone who already assesses taxes in a 3-mile radius of the property. So in order to comply with those requirements, the posting and mailing of notice, I'm asking that you set the hearing for September 17th, 2018. And it can't be set more than 30 days from the date that you set the hearing.
Is there a motion to set that hearing date?
I'll make a motion to set that hearing date of September 17th, 2018.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes, that motion passes 6-0. Public comments for items not on the agenda per Municipal Code 2.04.030 J2B. Public comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have any public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to board authorizations. Oath of office for new police officer September 17th. Does that work for the board?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Proclamation of October is Arts Month. September 17th also.
Yeah,
All in
that's
favor?
fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I have, well, 1.5 other board authorizations. Kip Peterson has reached out to me. He is Danella's water director. He was previously working with our former town manager on some regional water items. He would like to come. I expressed to him that he would have to come before the board and discuss it. So he was hoping for the 17th also.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Ms. Hogan, will you add that to the 17th?
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Corley, I believe I asked him to get in touch with you and Tom to whatever he needs to present. Well, and you too, Ms. Hogan, but putting it on the agenda. The other item I had was, I was under the impression we did not have, up until tonight maybe, we did not have anything but one presentation for the September 5th meeting.
I believe it would be September 4th, which
Oh,
would be the
4th, I'm
Tuesday
sorry.
after Labor Day, is what our schedule says. And as of now, the only thing we have on the agenda is Tri-Lakes Chamber of Commerce Visitor Center Economic Development presentation.
And we have the note
But now we
for
have
financing.
the financing. So originally I was going to propose canceling that meeting, but I think that would harm our water projects.
You all just.
Any discussion on that?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
The September 4th meeting stands.
I was enjoying our weekly meetings.
Yeah.
Town manager report, Ms. Smith. I'm sorry, did you have?
Yeah, I have something that I'd like to run by the board, and maybe we can add on. Our Explorers, they recently did a competition and they placed very well. And I'd just like to propose that maybe we could have them come on the 5th
Okay.
and do a presentation, and we could acknowledge them, and I think that would be like very impressive. I mean, they're a great bunch of kids.
Chief Shirk, is the 5th too short of notice, or will that work? Or September 4th?
September 4th.
September 4th.
I would pose that to them. School will have started, so I don't know if that's going to interfere, but I will work with them and see if I can get them here.
Can we have that on the agenda tentatively for the 4th, not the 5th?
And if I may, I have a couple of requests. May I bring forth a Cities and Towns Week proclamation and Creek Week proclamation? I don't necessarily know which agendas will be the most appropriate, but I'd like to, in the near future, bring those.
Creek
Creek Week.
was end of September,
Yeah.
correct?
That one should probably go on the September 17th agenda, and then Cities and Towns Week on the September 4th agenda.
Okay.
And then
Support.
oh, sorry.
Is the board good with that? Okay.
And then I believe Jennifer Jones has a request to make as far as some planning commission appointments.
Okay.
The planning staff would like to bring forward some candidates for planning commission spots that are currently vacant and additional spots that will be opening in January. So staff would just like to ask the board how they would like to handle that. We would tentatively like to bring it on October 1st. So what I mean by that is, would the board like the applicants to all be present? Would you like to have only their application that they filled out, or would you like for them to perhaps write something, or in what manner would be most helpful for the board? What information would you like to have in order to be able to make those appointments here in a couple of, in October 1st?
How many applicants do we have, and how many seats do we need to fill?
So there's currently one regular vacancy on the planning commission. I have indication from another regular member that they will most likely be leaving after the September meeting for a relocation. So that would be 2 current vacancies.
Okay.
And then we have 3 sitting members whose terms expire December 31st, and the 2 the 2 alternate positions also expire December 31st. So what I believe at the moment, I believe we have 5 applications. That certainly more could always come in. If anyone is interested in applying for our planning commission, please do so. So what I would like to do is bring you all of those with the opportunity to appoint potentially 2 seats effective immediately, or at the next, whatever's the most appropriate way to do that. And then potentially go ahead and appoint folks to fill those spots in January, thinking that November, December, sometimes things get very busy and crazy, and what we wanted to avoid was having a time where we didn't have enough folks to have those meetings. I think this board has noticed a couple of times that we are having fairly small planning commission meetings, and so that's another reason why we're trying to be sure we have all the spots that we can fill, so that we can always be able to have our meetings when applicants need them, if that makes sense. So the direction I'm looking for from the board is, what information would you like for staff to present in order for you all to feel comfortable making appointments on October 1st?
I was just going to say, in the past, and I think our Mayor Pro Temp remembers, they came in front of us and we got a chance to ask them some questions. And I think that's the best way. And they sent us some information prior. I think it was a brief application.
Was it an application or a letter? It was an application?
I think it was a brief application in the past years.
Application and resume?
So we have a standard application on the website that anyone can fill out and indicate if they're interested in the Board of Adjustment or Planning Commission, with some basic questions. Some folks in the past have also submitted a resume. So right now I have applications from everyone. I believe I have 2 resumes in addition. So, you know, if there's something else you want, I can certainly ask them for that. And I can certainly ask them to be present on that night if that's what the board would like.
So I would be okay with just the information you have, and then if they would be present.
Okay,
I think that's a
I
good.
agree.
Everyone agree?
Yes.
perfect. Okay, well, planning staff will plan to bring that to you on the October 1st agenda.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Hogan, did you have any other report authorizations?
I believe that's it.
Okay. Ms. Smith, did you have anything to add to the town manager's report?
No, you have it. If you have any questions or any department heads, we would be happy to answer them.
Okay.